Iga Swiatek has landed in Sydney, Australia, and she's mic'd up, ladies and gentlemen. As always, this video is brought to you via the Doctrine of Fair Use, the Fair Dealing, and the Digital Millennium Act. I'm your host, Skin Energy. Welcome to Tennis in a Minute, and the world's former ranked number one. 125 weeks at number one, an amazing talent from Warsaw. Her footwork is so good, she should be on Dancing with the Stars, and she'd probably win that too. She made the Sunshine Double look like a routine day at the beach. And she's mic'd up, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. She just landed in Sydney, Australia, and she is ready for another run at the United Cup. She had some good things to say, though, about Alex and Katie, their engagement. She said it was great for the sport, and she was also asked the tough questions. That's right, guys, at the press conference for the United Cup. Team Poland in the building. That's Big Hubert H squared. Now, listen, the last 2 years at the United Cup have been a roller coaster ride for Polish fans. That's right. We saw in 23 Iga Swiatek take on Jessica Pegula, and I was outraged at how they flew Team Poland in at the very last minute. That's right, after the Americans had an entire week to warm up to the courts, get used to the playing conditions, and you fly Team Poland, you fly them in at the very last minute when you have a match that same day and you expect them to get acclimated to the court? Of course not. Pegula won that, and Pegula was classy in the post-match interview. She said, look, I've been playing here all week, and in fair defense for Team Poland, they just got here. It's very tough to just come onto a court and expect to play your best. Last United Cup, this past January, we saw a very, very game Iga Swiatek just destroy the field. We saw her take out Beatrice Haddad, Sarah Sorribes Termo. We saw her take out Kinwen Jong. Now, the only set she would drop would be the Bonjour Comme Voulez-Vous, Caroline Garcia, and she would also take out Angelique Kerber. Now, they stormed into the championship match against Team Germany, but Alexander Zverev and Kerber would actually win that doubles match. And a lot of people were upset at Hubert. They felt Hubert did not hold up his end of the bargain. I personally felt that Iga was playing a little too much. I felt she was possibly overworked. But then again, in that situation, you got to go with your best star. But Team Poland would lose to Germany. How are they going to do this year, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to see. But first, we have to get into the juicy stuff. Iga Swiatek was asked how, and by the way, congratulations, Alex and Katie. I've been a huge Katie Bolter fan. I've supported her on this channel, and congratulations on the engagement. Iga Swiatek congratulated them as well. I think it's a beautiful thing for the sport. Like Iga Swiatek said, it's great for the sport that, you know, two people like that can come together and find each other on the tour as well. I think that's beautiful. I'm always excited when the ATP meets the WTA. I think it's great. You know, and I've always been an advocate that I personally think when the ATP meets the WTA, these headline, I think the men should headline some of these matches and rotate it as well, especially when you have the bigger stars. But I don't like when, for example, they'll take a big name from the ATP and give them the early match, because what happens if you go to these matches, you'll see, and we all know the ATP is a much bigger organization, right? A lot more revenue. What happens is the fans, they come to these matches. When the ATP match is over, they leave. And then you have the WTA headliner and there's no one in the stadium. I've seen this tons of times. So I think the scheduling, they do have to plan a little bit better when these tours cross paths. But again, I do want to continue to see the ladies headline some of these matches. Like if you have Coco or Iga, these big stars, yes, they can headline, but I would also like to see them play that early match as well, because these seats are full at these matches. But when that ATP match is over and that WTA headliner goes on, those fans have left and they're not coming back. So I think scheduling and marketing, they can do a little bit better job, right? Because we want to put these ladies out in front of the world. We want them playing in full packed stands. And Iga Swiatek said this herself. the last couple of seasons when it comes to the WTA finals, she wants to play in a packed stands. And I kind of felt bad. And, Iga Swiatek, the last few years, she's been apologizing and begging the fans to come out early. It's not her fault. Marketing's got to do a better job. I personally think the ticket prices, you got to cut the ticket prices. At this point, your sponsors should be covering all of these expenses, the marketing, and all of that stuff. The WTA should not be shelling out money at the finals. It should be to the point where if you can't sell out the stands or the seats, you got to work out some type of deal with your sponsors and endorsements. And look, slash the ticket prices. It's all covered anyway, right? But let's get to the good stuff, guys. Iga Swiatek was asked, does she think her suspension or final decision, the final ruling from the ITIA, if that will be overturned by WADA? WADA. Do you guys think so? Iga Swiatek says no. And she says, look, there's no reason to. She doesn't believe so. She complied with everything they asked for, right? She did her part. She provided the data that they needed. The ITIA made a decision, and they determined that, look, it was not her fault. It was cross-contamination from a supplement that she was taking as a sleep aid. And she said, look, she suffered enough. She said she missed several tournaments. She was fined over 6 figures, and she lost her number 1 ranking. I mean, that's pretty stiff penalty as it is. I think losing the number 1 ranking after being number 1 for over 125 weeks. I mean, that's pretty tough as it is. But again, other players, though, haven't been as supportive. We all know Sima Halop, who actually had to withdraw from the Australian Open after getting a wild card due to knee and shoulder issues. She's complaining about, how the suspension, the unfair suspension, in her words, set her back because her body can't keep up with her mind. That's right. The reaction time on court is not there. She felt that the recovery is not there. And we can see now the injuries, right? She hasn't played. She's in her mid-30s, just about. And it's getting to the point where a lot of people feel she's running out of time for her age. And I talked about when these ladies get over 30, you're just not making it to a WTA Slam final. It doesn't happen. Pegula's been the exception. Aside from Jessica Pegula, we all know the only one to really do it the last 10 years have been the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena, the only 2 ladies I can think of over 30. There's one other, I can't remember her name right now, but there's only been 4 ladies the last 12, 13 years to make a Grand Slam final over the age of 30. And both of those 2 of those come from Compton, California, Venus and Serena. But I do feel personally that Iga Swiatek, I think that the ITIA, look, we know that as an organization that's based around integrity for the sport, right? So they're going to do their due diligence, right? They're going to come up with what they come up with. And the test is what it is. It shows a minimal level of TMZ, and they consider that to be cross-contaminated. And Iga Swiatek provided the information that showed it came from the gummies that she was taking for the melatonin, the sleep aid. So she doesn't feel that WADA is going to overturn the decision. And the big news is a lot of people think they may because of Sinner's issue on the ATP. Now, Sinner, that's a little bit different story there. I think his story is... I don't know. I mean, it seems his story is definitely needs more looking into, and that's why they did that. Not exactly clear cut as Iga Swiatek's story. And Iga said this herself. She said, look, everyone has a different story, and she feels they're fair. The ITIA is fair is investigating it. Now, that's Iga with Hubert taking pictures ahead of the United Cup. We're going to see if they can pull it off. That's her practicing. Me personally, I've talked about, look, just coming off of that, 30-win season in 21, following that up by 22, 23, and 24, 3 consecutive 60-plus win seasons. We know the 22 season, she won 70 matches. Her performance, I felt, and I've said this in the past, this is my personal opinion, this is part where I give my fair criticism. I felt her performance to double her win percentage, to go from 34 wins, 35, 36 wins, I think 36 wins, I want to say, to 70. That's unique. That's very odd. It's very rare. I felt her performance, especially that consecutive win streak where she took out Venus Williams' record, took the store by storm, winning 2 Grand Slams in a year. I felt it was odd. I felt her performance, especially coming off that 21 championship in Guadalajara in Mexico, where she was the weakest player, mentioned by several analysts and former players, Hall of Fame players, that she needed to really work on her game. She had a lot of improvements, and to come back and win, 70 matches, I felt was a bit weird. I felt her strength improved, her speed, her footwork. She just looked like a different player. Now, of course, hard work, practice. If you go into the gym, you put in the work, you're going to see the results. But I just felt the way she dominated the elite players that year, it just seemed like the tour was just way behind her, right? So that I felt was puzzling. But other players have come forward, like Sima Halop, and they just feel the ITIA gave Iga Swiatek special treatment, right? You're giving a provisional suspension. You're going to allow her to, play, resume, and then get suspended again. Sima Halop said, "What is this? That's insane." But you had other players on the record as well, like Nick Carros, who he is very outspoken. Nick Carros said he thinks this situation with Iga Swiatek, allegedly in his words, it gives young upcoming players an excuse to get caught cheating and say, "I didn't know." What do you guys think about that? Now, that's Nick's opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And Iga Swiatek said it herself. She said she thought initially that a lot of people would turn their backs on her. She said overall in Poland, and she was a bit hesitant, she said overall in Poland, the reception has been pretty good. And she said overall the reception has been pretty good. But did you hear what Arina Sabalenka said? Arina Sabalenka is on record stating, look, we will never know the truth. What does that mean, by the way? We will never know the truth. Is she hinting at something? But she would also say that she believes in a clean sport. And let's talk about Serena. Okay, now Serena Williams, during her time, was the most tested athlete on tour, male or female. Now, Serena, they would literally show up at her house. That's right, guys. They would show up to Serena Williams' house, right, off of game schedule. They would show up to her house and test her, which was insane, by the way, right? Normally with the testing, it's going to take place, during some type of match function, right? Or some type of schedule pertaining to an event, whether it's at your hotel, before the match, after the match, in your training, practicing facility. It's going to revolve around the match and the game schedule. They would show up to Serena's house in 8, 7 in the morning and test her. And Serena would be like, this is insane, guys. You're showing up at my house testing me. And she never failed a drug test. Serena Williams, the greatest female player of all time, especially, in the open era, at least, depending on what age you started watching tennis, and, because the open era is a lot more competitive, in my personal opinion, than some of these other decades. But then again, you have some of these historians that say, like, Althea Gibson would beat Serena Williams. I think the game has evolved a lot. You have different size rackets. Grass was, the premier court then. Now you could technically say it's hard. Clay has taken off, as Iga Swiatek is known as the queen of clay. But I just think the way Serena was treated was crazy. I mean, to show up at her house and test her all those times. Serena was tested actually more than the top female and male players combined in some of those years. So that was crazy. But nonetheless, Serena Williams, the greatest of all time, never failed a drug test. It was all natural. And if you watched her come up at an early age, I mean, you saw she had her father's genetics. She was just really athletic and explosive. And if you see King Richard, we all know Venus was the superstar early on. Everyone remembers Venus was that superstar, but you knew Serena just had it, and she proved the world she did. But Arena Sabalenka believe. And did you guys see now? We're on the Australian leg of the tour. Remember the last time Serena played Arena Sabalenka? She just destroyed her. Oof, she beat Sabalenka pretty bad, but nonetheless, a younger version of Sabalenka. I mean, that was still what I'd probably say 4 or 5 years now, maybe 3, 4, maybe 4 years ago, but nonetheless, Sabalenka believes in a clean sport. And she said that's pretty much all she has to say. Iga Swiatek doesn't think that WADA is going to try and make an appeal. I don't think so either. I mean, there's not really much to it, right? Minimal amount of TMZ, but again, a lot of critics are out there. And Iga Swiatek said, overall, look, people, they're going to say what they're going to say. She said she hasn't been on the internet. She's just trying to focus on doing what she needs to do. And yes, I hear it. I see it online. A lot of people think that and this is their opinion allegedly, but a lot of people think that Iga Swiatek is not a clean player and that her results have been the result of performance enhancing drugs. But she only failed one drug test, and the ITIA determined that was cross-contamination. But people will say what they want, and they're going to say what they feel. And everyone is entitled to their own opinion, right? We all know that. But Iga Swiatek, she said she's getting ready for the season. She's focusing on the things she needs to do. And I personally think this is going to be a make or break year for Iga. We've already seen Maria Sakkari, the Greek goddess, right? I created that nickname. It's taken off. She just lost to Jessica Monero, and that's a very tough loss. Yes, Buzas did play Elena Rybakina, so she's got that game match under her belt. But Sakkari looked really bad today, and I think this is going to be a make or break season for Sakkari. I've been saying this going back 4 or 5 months now. This 25 season is a make or break season for Sakkari. We could possibly see her drop out of the top 10, top 20 even. But I also think this is a make or break season for Iga Swiatek. She's going to have to defend that Rolling Girls Championship. She's not the favorite to win the Australian Open. The favorite to win the Australian Open is Sabalenka. She's going for a third time. And then it's Coco. In my personal opinion, I do think Coco will win the Australian Open. But I think Iga Swiatek, with all the pressure and news stories that's been revolving around her, I think she needs a good showing here at the United Cup. I think she needs a good showing on the Australian leg of the tour. But I also think she's going to have to defend. She's going to have to defend that title at the Indian Wells. I think she's going to have to defend that title. And I think she's going to have to do well at Miami. I personally think so, because she's going to have to start this season off good. And even the early African leg of the tour, she's going to have to start this season off really well. 5 titles this past season. She's going to have to win at least 5 titles this year, including a slam, or the critics are going to come for her, guys. They are already doing so. And I'll keep you posted. Tennis in a minute. Iga Swiatek lands in Sydney, Australia, ahead of the United Cup. Can they take the title finally after 2 heartbreaking seasons? Tennis in a minute. We'll be back.